Welcome to Rock Paper Shotgun. My name is Colin Mahern and I'm here to tell you that if you want to be an aspiring city planner, or if you just want to see if you can survive against the elements, there's a management game out there for you. But to save you time searching digital storefronts, we've compiled this list of 12 of the very best in the genre. We focused on games that are fun and easy to play right now, which means that we have had to ditch some of the all-time classics. Still, these 12 deserve your attention and will have you feeling like a well-oiled time management machine when all is said and done. If at the end of this video you find that your fave didn't get a mention, then be sure to have a look at our full list of the 20 best management games on PC on rockpapershotgun.com. It might be on there. If it's not, then tell us all about your favourite in the comments section. Maybe you'll convince others and us to give it a go. So, let's get into it. Here are 12 of the very best management games to play on PC, as selected by all of us at Rock Paper Shotgun. Most management games are about indulging yourself as opposed to providing a real challenge. They're about an ever-widening circle of building possibility. The more hours you put in, the more things open up. Frostpunk is different. This game's interest is in starkly limiting what options are available to you, to the point where you're frequently making some absolutely crushing decisions about what you have to sacrifice in order to gain or fix something else. Set during a sort of steampunk post-apocalypse, you're tasked with keeping a handful of shivering, starving refugees of a new ice age alive. There are barely any resources, and anyone who doesn't live close to the life-giving heat generators won't last long. Sickness is inevitable, but you need the workers to bring in fuel and food to keep everyone else alive. Do you let the ill heal, or do you amputate? What about children? More hands on deck, or is having a childhood more important? Frostpunk is management on the edge, where almost every decision you take, almost every building you erect, is a huge risk. It can be mastered in time, but until then, it is a desperate, harrowing and deft inversion of the usual race to riches approach. Theme Hospital might have been the first popular management game to dwell on the dark side of profiteering, but Prison Architect is an even darker proposition. Can you keep your inmates happy? Can you make a profit? How important is it to process death row residents efficiently? What happens when a riot breaks out? The brilliance in Introversion's game is in its recognition that a prison is a series of systems, of housing and treatment, of security and recreation, and then in its application of sturdy simulations to each of those systems. Like the best management games, it allows you to create a smoothly running machine, but it also embraces chaos and role-playing. During the most intricate planning, you can forget what the theme implies about the resources you're processing, but Prison Architect is only ever a moment away from reminding you of the humanity within the machine. Honestly, throw a rock in the air and just play whichever Tropico game it lands on. They're all good, and they're all based on the exact same concept. You're the comedy dictator of an initially poor island nation, attempting to transform it into a land of tourist and trade riches, while ruling with an at least partially iron fist. A great many of the complexities of, say, SimCity are discarded. There's no real worrying about power lines or water supplies, allowing you to instead get on with the business of plopping down buildings with the twin goals of making it all look lively and attractive and generating ever more filthy lucre. This is more of a toy box to rummage in than it is a strategic puzzle, but it has an extra layer of mild moral dilemmas that keep you hooked. Tropico 6 also finally adds some much needed spice to this most conservative of management series by stretching out your latest empire across an entire archipelago of islands, switching your traditional goal of expansion for expansion's sake to something you're actively striving towards. It's a small change, sure, but as that old saying goes, even the smallest change can make a profound difference. Banished is a different sort of management game. At first glance, it looks like a Settlers or an Anno. Good-natured, breaks on building and tree chopping, enjoying the gradual and all but inevitable expansion from scruffy one-horse town to bustling old-world metropolis. But no, Banished is about scratching out a rudimentary life in the dirt and cold and maintaining that life even as the elements turn against you, striving to subsist rather than to explode into glory. If approached wanting a cheery city builder, you're going to have a horrible time. If approached as a sterling test of planning and resource management, in which failing to get it right means great suffering and even death for the handful of people in your charge, it's going to keep you very busy, challenged, and ultimately feeling far prouder of yourself than pretty much anything else on this list. It's cruel, but it takes the things we take for granted in other management games and makes them feel like titanic accomplishments. True heir to the Roller Coaster Tycoon series, Planet Coaster is a game of theme park management with a particular focus on building and, most importantly, riding increasingly elaborate and or impossible roller coasters. The true star of the show, though, is its Steam Workshop support, where you can import or upload remarkable and sometimes terrible constructions. People have built some jaw-dropping stuff in Planet Coaster, and this age of massive monitors means that riding them is a genuine thrill. Even if you're not into sharing with or borrowing from the wider world, Planet Coaster's focus is much more on building stuff yourself than it is plopping down prefabs. This is the designer's management game, not the accountant's management game. Its construction tools are delightfully accessible, and you'll be able to coax meaningful results out of them very quickly. Keeping your guests happy and the coffers overflowing is still a fundamental part of the game though, and you'll need all the ancillary theme park money rinsers such as cafes and gift shops too. After all, if you build it, they will come. Most management games are secretly puzzle games too, figuring out how to fit all these pieces into this finite space and how to get X resource to Y place as efficiently as possible. Factorio takes this idea and runs with it to its natural extreme. Impossibly dense, maze-like conveyor belt constructions shuffling massive networks of production back and forth between endless auto factories, making this to make that to make this to make that, loop upon loop. To gaze upon a late-game Factorio screenshot without ever having played the game is to gaze into the face of madness itself. But Factorio's greatest accomplishment is how quickly that obscene mountain of merchandised noodles makes sense once you've put a couple of hours into it. From the humble starting point of a single conveyor belt forlornly shifting resources to the next machine, a portal of possibilities opens up once you see what can be achieved. Factorio is an accomplishment as frightening as it is remarkable. The mind that was able to design this game surely transcends humanity as we know it. Hospital is a hectic hospital management sim, but it is immensely satisfying at the same time. When you finally get a brief window of respite, you expand, create new problems, compensate for those problems, and are able to enjoy watching the machine operate as smoothly as it's ever going to. Then it will throw a helicopter at you, full of patients convinced that they're Freddie Mercury, and suddenly the game's jaunty radio jazz transforms into a mocking dirge that guffaws at your efforts to maintain control. 2 Point Hospital is a business sim first. It's about staying afloat, whether that can be through fleecing your patients or by building your reputation as the best hospital around. It can often be just as entertaining when you're failing though. Since it balances visual chaos with workable informative interfaces, you can nearly always find out what the problem is with a few clicks. It's as colourful as it is compulsive. It celebrates the legacy of Bullfrog, even as it vastly improves and expands on so many elements. moments? Want some light social commentary on the machine-like nature of public services that prioritise efficiency over patient well-being? It's got that. Want some toilets made out of solid gold and DLC that lets you save Christmas with a Yeti? It's got that too. Thing about Max's world-straddling life management series is how few other games have ripped it off. The Sims remains effectively peerless within its honking great niche, undisputed heavyweight champion of the human needs, drives and desires simulation world. From managing actual Sims by making sure they get to work on time, don't get lonely, don't lose all their friends and, don't die, to building homes that they can properly navigate. There is a lot to keep you busy here. Lifelong Simmers will probably tell you that The Sims 2 is the best in the series, but we swear by The Sims 4. I mean, you can at least buy this one. The Sims 2 never came to Steam and EA have long since withdrawn it from their store. The Sims 4 has also got one of the most robust and thriving modding communities around, cementing it as the one you should get in our eyes. We'd have picked SimCity 4 to represent modern but traditional city builders, but now that Cities Skylines has had a couple of years to bed in, with copious DLC and the mammoth impact of its modding community, there's no doubt that Colossal Order's triumphant revival of the genre picks up Max's battered baton. A session with Skylines is reminiscent of the golden age of gaming. That's not any particular year, it's related to your own relationship with games. Remember when you'd spend hours playing without worrying about the outside world or even feeling any pressure from within the game itself? Just comfortable, calming bliss, laying roads and watching a city grow before your eyes. Skylines creates those long holidays from reality. It's relaxation in game form. That's not to say the actual simulation isn't complex though. If you want a challenge, Skylines can deliver, though you'll often have to set your own parameters. The brilliance of the game is in the variety of cities it can host, from perfect geometrical machines to wonderful recreations of real-life locations. It's like the biggest box of building blocks in the world. Dwarf Fortress is so much more than a management game, but where else could we file it? The question should really be, if Dwarf Fortress is a management game, by what standard is it not the best management game? Because it's too broad and baggy to allow for definite managerial approaches to emerge? Because learning the obtuse interface is actual work? Or because it's about dwarves and we know that management games are all about taxes? Admittedly, Dwarven Tax Tycoon would be a fine proposition, but for now you should play Dwarf Fortress. It's one of the most remarkable, complex and unpredictable games ever made, and probably always will be. Even over a decade on, nothing else drills as deep into the mantle of community simulation as Dwarf Fortress. Yes, it is a bear to learn, but the rewards for doing so are off the chart. All the best management games bring something extra to the core gather, build, grow flow. With Stardew Valley, it's role-playing. Mostly you're diligently tending and harvesting crops and then selling or trading them on. And this gently productive loop is why almost anyone who hears the word Stardew Valley will look simultaneously misty-eyed, because it's such a warm game to be in, and guilty, because it effortlessly consumes any spare time you have. But just as you tend your fields, so too do you tend relationships with the NPC townsfolk, slowly coaxing their stories out of them, opening up new possibilities in what you can do/grow. Context is something that's so often lacking in other management games. You exist in some void, building and spending, with no sense of connection to anything or anyone else outside of it. You only care about people in terms of numbers. Here, you care about them as people. And so managing your farm, the core acts of collection, growth and expansion, has meaning. It's connected to the town. It brings good things to the town. You bring good things to the town. But mostly, waking up and rushing to see if today's the day your potatoes have finished growing never stops being as thrilling as it is charming. There are management games about buildings, and then there are management games about people. RimWorld, for all the bird's eye perspective and homespun wooden structures, is very much about people. The survivors of a crash landing on an unknown world are trying to survive and then thrive in a hostile place. But the heart of the game is their AI-driven personalities, their preferences, limitations, specialities, fears, hobbies, and relationships with each other. If you don't pay heed to these, the beasts outside are the least of your problems. Each colonist has their own mind, and you will have to learn it well. Personality even comes into play with your choice of storyteller, a sort of AI dungeon master who controls the pace and nature of the disasters you face. And those crises do extend to building and farming too. Look out for exploding power cells, crop lights, and vomiting chickens amongst the many ways your colony might be laid suddenly low. There is an ultimate objective, escape, but the genius of RimWorld's genius is how free-rolling and wildly unpredictable it is, and how it quietly writes a new story for you every time you play. Together, they cement its place as the best management game you can play on PC right now. At this point in the video you're wondering where your favourite is, then be sure to check out RPS's full list of the best management games to play on PC on rockpapershotgun.com. You might find that your fave actually did make the cut. If it didn't, then why not leave a comment championing the management game you love more than any other. We love to celebrate great games, so we'd be happy to hear about the management game you hold dear. As always, thank you very much for watching, you absolute star, and remember, for all of your PC gaming needs, keep it on rockpapershotgun.com.